in the deepest ocean, high in the highest mountain. Deep in the deepest ocean, high in the highest mountain. In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation. In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Dear viewers, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host Kareem Abu Zaid, and I welcome you once again to Aqeedah Matters. This episode is episode number 53, and we are talking about the guidelines on Takfir, 7 golden rules. In the previous episode, we presented to you the danger of the widespread of the ideology of a sect in Islam called Al-Khawarij. That sect had its birth, actual birth, during the time of Uthman, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, and they actually labeled companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of them actually were giving glad tidings of Jannah to be disbelievers. They actually labeled a lot of the companions, if not the majority of them, to be disbelievers on the basis of major sins. And they used these conflicts, the fighting which happened between the armies of Ali radiallahu anh and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu anh as the basis, the premise upon which they actually started labeling these companions to be disbelievers. That ideology dies sometimes in the Muslim world, but it comes back up again. And unfortunately, we are witnessing another rise of this ideology. And in the previous episode, we explained to the viewers the danger and the serious consequences of such an ideology. It leads to transgression, it leads to resentment, it leads to hate, it leads to all type of negativity in the Muslim community. And at the end of the episode, we presented the solution to you, and we said the solution is knowledge, education, educating the Muslims about their religion, educating these young men, because that trend or that ideology is flourishing amongst the youth of the Muslim Ummah in the East, the West, the North, the South. It can be in your back door. It can be in your home. It can be in your communities. And the way to combat it is not violence, is not fighting. It's actually knowledge. It has been proven by evidence that education is the solution to the problem of takfir, that we spread the understanding of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. We spread the understanding of the religion according to our righteous predecessors, because they were on the medium course or in the medium course or in the middle path once it comes to two extremes. I go back and say that the truth or the middle way is between two extremes. With respect to takfir, you will find two extremes and a middle. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, meaning the adherence to the Sunnah, is on the medium course with respect to all the fundamentals of the religion. They are between the two extremes, the excessive one who exceeded the limits and the negligent one. And this is how we describe the ummah, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. And thus we have made you a just nation. Similarly, regarding the matter of takfir, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is on the medium course between extremism and negligence. Between extremism manifested in the ideology of al-Khawarij, and negligence manifested in the ideology of al-Murji'ah and al-Jahmiyyah. Let's address the excessive one. The first category is al-Khawarij. They impute Kufr on the Muslim due to major sins. With some have gone to the extent to impute Kufr on the Muslims, of course, due to minor sins. So basically, because you're committing major sins, they label you to be a kafir. Oh. Without what? Without verifying, without checking out, without establishing the evidence. And again, I need to repeat these three mysterious terminologies. And inshallah, maybe the next episode, we will explain these three mysterious terminologies: establishing the evidence, fulfilling the conditions, removing the barriers. Oh, so they do that. Some of them actually went to the extreme of labeling Muslims to be disbelievers on the basis of them committing minor sins. And they went after the area of being consistent in committing minor sins. Similarly, they impute kufr on any Muslim who does not, and this is really where the danger is, where the danger is. They actually label Muslims who do not believe the same way as they do believe to be disbelievers. You know, remember some of these politicians, maybe a decade ago, they came up with that term, which is really a term that is adopted by al-Khawarij, the dissidents or the breakaway group, the same ideology. If you're not with us, you're against us. If you're not aligning yourself with us, you're against us. This is the ideology of al-Khawarij. By the way, they label the Muslims on the basis of major sins to be disbelievers. Not only this, if you do not agree with that criteria upon which they took Muslims out of the fold of Islam, you are a disbeliever. You could be someone who is not committing major sins. You could be someone, alhamdulillah, who is not in the area of major sins. But if you do not condone their ideology, that means you are their enemy. And this group has an extension in our time, unfortunately, and it does exist in many parts of the Muslim world, and this is the danger of it. What is important is that this affair has conditions, and it is not permissible to rush into takfir, just as it is not permissible to rush into saying this is halal, lawful, and this is haram, unlawful. Like when you see somebody praying exactly, and you see him not fulfilling one of the duties or one of the pillars of salah, do you tell him your salah is invalid? Your salah is not accepted? Or you tell him, listen, because he may not know, listen, you losing that pillar would make your salah invalid. So you describe the act, but not to point fingers. Al-Khawarij, they are excessive because they point fingers to Muslims, to certain individuals, without what? Again, the three mysterious terms. Without establishing the evidence against the doer, the one who committed the act or said the statement, without fulfilling the conditions, and without removing the barriers. And again, I'm intentionally not explaining these three mysterious terms because this is really the essence of the subject of takfir. Now, in the other end of this, the negligent one, al-Murji'ah. And this is, in my opinion, you know the problem with these two groups, the two extremes. You know, they serve one another. You know, they play with one another. You know, you got that end where they are so extreme in labeling Muslims to be disbelievers, and that other end. Let's learn about al-Murji'ah first. The second group is al-Murji'ah, and with them comes a group called al-Jahmiyyah. Al-Jahmiyyah. They claim that Iman, faith, is not affected by any sinful act. Even if the Muslim commits a major sin, they say all Muslims are believers and nothing affects faith. Although the beliefs of al-Murji'ah comprise different portions, this is an overall summary of their views. That's a danger. Murji'ah do not make takfir on any nawaqid, in any nullifiers of Islam. And they restrict the nawaqid to juhud or istihlal. What does it mean? Because they believe that faith, iman, is just tasdeeq. As long as in your heart you still believe, you could act, you could say things which can take you out of the fold of Islam, provided that you still believe. So simply they dismissed the fact that we should call any person to be a disbeliever. There is no such a thing called kufr, basically. And they turned the issue into a loose, that's the word. Basically, they add to the fact that they went against the Quran and the Sunnah and the methodology of our righteous predecessors. They really made things easy on a lot of people. You don't have to pray, you don't have to fast, you don't have to do any of the pillars of Islam, as long as you have tasdeeq in your heart, as long as your heart is white, as long as Allah is in your heart. All these terms which were developed by different cultures, no. You see, the truth is in the middle, where we stand in the middle. And the point I was trying to make right before presenting to you the understanding of al-Murji'ah and al-Jahmiyyah with respect to the subject of takfir and their stand on the subject, what I was trying to say is they serve to one another. Like, okay, here you are, you're trying to let people know, listen, committing major sins is haram, we should stay away from major sins because this is not good. Then al-Murji'ah will say, oh, you're going to be like this Khawarij, who are going to label Muslims to be disbelievers because of major sins. And then when you go to al-Khawarij end and say, al-Khawarij, please don't label Muslims to be disbelievers on the basis of major sins, that is not good. Oh, you're trying to be like al-Murji'ah who say nobody disbelieves and you just want to leave the religion to be like this. They serve one another, and the middle course is the correct path. Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah are on the medium course with respect to the subject of takfir. They are between the two extremes. They don't rush to impute kufr on the Muslims while not refraining from imputing kufr on him or on them if the person commits that which Allah and or his messenger declare to be kufr. However, they note the Muslim who may say or do that which is considered to be kufr should not have been labeled to be kafir, or kufr should not be imputed on him until the following is being established. The evidence is being established, the conditions are fulfilled, and all the obstacles, barriers, the impediments are removed. Like I said a minute ago, al-Murji'ah and al-Khawarij, they play with one another against really us. Al-Murji'ah appeared as an outcome of the appearance of al-Khawarij. Those who, if they saw a big sin, they would declare him as a disbeliever and out of the fold of Islam, and they would make his blood and wealth halal, and they have called the lands of Islam the land of war and disbelief, and al-Murji'ah let things loose. But we go back to our position here because this is a serious matter. The position of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah is crystal clear. We always stand by the evidence, accept it, strongly advocate for it with clarity, because this is the religion of Allah. And if we do not explain this, if we do not show this to the people, guess what? the truth is going to be wasted between those two groups. One group is going to take the ummah to extremism, labeling the rulers and those who assist and collaborate with the rulers to be disbelievers, killing everybody, those who disagree with them to be disbelievers, and the other group is what? Is taking the ummah to the abandonment of the religion, but the truth is in the middle. If we do not explain the truth will be lost between these two groups, astray and deviant groups. Al-Khawarij went into extremism with regard to Takfir, and Al-Murji'ah went into extremism with regard to not Takfir. Those Khawarij, they make Takfir because of sins, and the Murji'ah don't make Takfir upon those who nullify their deen through actions, statements, and beliefs. So the way the truth this way, if we leave this, the truth will be lost and between the two deviant sects, and this is not going to work. The duty of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is to explain to the people the truth. That listen, those who commit major sins, we're not going to rush. And this is really where the white thread, this is very tiny thread there. Listen to me. Pay attention to this. Those who commit major sins, we're not going to rush into imputing or labeling them to be disbelievers without the three mysterious terms: establishing the evidence against the doer, fulfilling the conditions, and removing the barriers. Before I label and point finger to a certain individual and call him to be a disbeliever, I have to follow these three steps. Dear Murji'ah, I'm sorry, if someone commits an act which is considered to be an act of kufr, of disbelief, in the sight of Allah, and after I fulfill the conditions, establish the evidence, remove the barriers, I could point finger and label him kafir, because listen, there are rulings which are based upon such a name. And I need to know what Iman is and what Kufr is. You can't just say everybody is a believer. You can't say that. Allah tells us that there are disbelievers in earth. I need to know what is Iman is and what is Kufr is. What act is considered to be an act of done by a believer, and what act is considered to be an act by a disbeliever. You can't just leave the area to be just like that, loose, with no boundaries. That is not the way that we go about it. Another trend here, brothers and sisters in Islam, and I'm really addressing brothers and sisters who live in the West, the term interfaith dialogue. First of all, I have some reservations regarding this term. Originally or initially, the term was developed by non-Muslims. But technically, a Muslim does not enter into the faith of another non-Muslim, basically. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. The Surah Al-Kafirun would actually show you this, that there is no such a thing that you enter into the faith. And if you know the reason why this verse was, this chapter, Al-Kafirun, was revealed, that actually the disbelievers offered the Prophet ﷺ to join him in worshipping Allah 1 year, and he would join them in worshipping their idols 1 year. Allah revealed the verses. طيب. The term interfaith is not really an Islamic term, because we as Muslims do not enter into the faith of other people. As simple as that. But now, for the sake of interfaith, you know, if you mean by da'wah, that you go and you present your Islam to non-Muslims without any compromises, if this is what you mean by the term interfaith dialogue, that's fine. Some of the people who are heavily engaged in the interfaith dialogue, they are claiming that those whom Islam has not yet reached them cannot be called disbelievers, because the evidence has not been established upon them. Remember what I said a minute ago, that you have to establish the evidence, fulfill the conditions, remove the barriers. So they are saying what? That I cannot call Christian and Jews to be disbelievers because they have not heard of Islam. Brothers and sisters in Islam, this is a fake, this is a wrong and false call. We know that humanity, with respect to the Prophet ﷺ, are of two types. Ummatul Da'wah, all of humanity, are the nation to whom the Prophet was sent. The Ummah, the nation of Da'wah. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ was sent to all of mankind. Christian, Jews, Hindus, disbelievers, whatever it is. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا. Now, there are those who responded, meaning they said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They are called the Ummah of response, Ummat al-Istijabah. They responded to the call of Allah and His Messenger. They are Muslims. What about the others? They are still called Kuffar because they have not believed in Allah and His Messenger. I cannot say that they are believers. I cannot say that. Simply, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that anyone who belongs to Christianity or Judaism hears of me, and he does not accept me to be the messenger, and he follows me, he will be a dweller of hell. That is fine. But yet, we still, as Muslims, have to label them to be disbelievers. Listen, this has nothing to do with the way that we treat them. This has nothing to do that we should present to them Islam in a nice, friendly way, showing them the praiseworthy teachings of this religion and refute all these misconceptions out there that which are spreading about Islam in the non-Muslim world. There is nothing, you see, but the fact that I must believe that they are disbelievers. I must believe that they are disbelievers. It's okay to call them the people of the book. The Jews and Christians are also known as the people of the book due to the fact that they have heard about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in their books. In the hadith, the Prophet, the hadith that I just quoted, I swear by the one in whose hand my life is, there is not a Jew or a Christian who heard about me and he dies without accepting that which I have brought, then he will be a dweller of hell. It's clear that there is no problem with us giving da'wah to Jews and Christians using means that causes them to love the religion, accept Islam, but without compromising. Because if we come to the nullifiers of Islam, the third nullifier of Islam, which we're going to present to you in Aqidah Matters, inshallah, that if you do not believe that the Jews and Christians are disbelievers, or you doubt the fact that they are disbelievers, or actually you correct their method, their deen, that takes you into, this is actually a nullifier of Islam. Why? Because simply you're belying the Quran and Sunnah. لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. What are you going to do with this? Indeed, those who say that Allah is the Messiah, Isa alayhi salam, are disbelievers. What are you going to do with this? Again, brothers and sisters in Islam, we cannot compromise that. There is no issue with us showing them the beauty of Islam, but I cannot go out there into these interfaith, quote unquote now, so-called interfaith dialogues and telling them you're good, you're going to paradise, you're doing okay, your deen is okay, you're worshipping a God. We can't do this. And I think this is the point that I'm trying to make, inshallah. Brothers and sisters in Islam, with this, we came to the essence of the show, of today's episode, the 7 golden rules, which if you read the Quran and Sunnah on the subject of Takfir, you will find the Ummah producing these rules which will help us, inshallah, deal with the subject of Takfir. Let's go over them, inshallah. 7 golden rules. We're going to read them to you, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and then after the break, inshallah, we will go over each one of them, hopefully present them to you. Rule number 1, Kufr is a religious ruling. And when I say a religious ruling, I'm saying what? Only Allah and His Messenger rule it. Now, if it is a religious ruling, rule number 2, this task belongs to the scholars who are well versed with the religious rulings, who can explain the religious rulings. Rule number 3, which I just explained, that we have al-Khawarij and we have al-Murji'ah. Al-Khawarij, they say, label anyone who commits a major sin without establishing the evidence, fulfilling the conditions, removing the barriers, to be a disbeliever. Kill them, take their wealth. Extreme. And the other side, al-Murji'ah, Jews and Christians and those who commit the nullifiers are Muslims. Don't say Kufr. No compromise. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is in the middle way. We're going to stick to the middle way. Whomever Allah and His Message labeled to be disbelievers, we're going to label them to be disbelievers, but after adhering to the guidelines set by the Sharia to do so. Number 4, the basis upon which we judge people is the outward appearance. If you appear to me to be a Muslim, I'm going to treat you like a Muslim. I'm not going to inspect what's in your heart. I'm not going to verify your beliefs. If you say that you're a Muslim, you're a Muslim. Number 5, we must learn the rulings which are results of takfir. This is actually the seriousness of the matter, that you know that there are certain rulings which are a result of labeling a certain individual to be a kafir. We have to differentiate between the act of kufr, and the doer. The fact that the act is an act of kufr does not necessitate that you label the doer of the act to be a kafir without what? Establishing the evidence, fulfilling the conditions, removing the barriers. The last piece, brothers and sisters in Islam, the last rule of the 7 rules is adhering to the Quran and the Sunnah and the guidelines set by the Sharia to label certain individuals to be kuffar. Let's take a short break and come back and explore these 7 golden rules which will help all of us deal with the subject. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In the desert, you can see God. In the desert, you can see God creation.
معلش يا عم.
اوعى تمسح اللي فات بس، الله يسترها معاك.
جاهزة إن شاء الله.
In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I welcome you once again to Aqeedah Matters. Knowledge is the key to know what's going on, to live by it. This is the solution. Ignorance have costed the Muslim Ummah a lot. And it's time to go back to the real stuff, to the teachings of the true scholars. Scholars of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The people who defined Iman. And all the issues which, because all these issues are really are a branch of the core issue, which is the definition of Iman. You find the 2 extremes, Khawarij, going away from that definition by saying Iman is one entity. And Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah say what? Iman increases and decreases. The fact that you're saying it's one entity, that means if you commit a major sin, your Iman is gone. And consequently, you're no longer a mu'min, you're no longer a Muslim. And the fact that you're no longer a Muslim, that means we can kill you, we can take away your wealth, and all these rulings which are simply a result of labeling a certain individual to be a kafir. And the other side, major sins do not act, actions, al-Murji'ah, the other extreme, actions, sayings of the tongue, actions of the heart, actions of the limbs, do not impact Iman negatively or positively. As long as you have tasdeeq, ma'rifah, al-Jahmiyyah say ma'rifah, you're good to go. Your Iman is like Jibreel. Allahu Akbar. Look at Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah in the middle. Likewise, this subject, the subject of takfir. You got al-Khawarij taking it easy, going after the Muslims who are committing major sins without establishing the evidence, without fulfilling the conditions, without removing the barriers, and they call them disbelievers and they kill them. And if you disagree with their ideology, you're also one of them to be killed. And the other end, you got al-Murji'ah. Don't do takfir on anybody. Don't use the word kufr. Wallahi, sometimes if you use the word kufr in front of them, like you speaking of fornication, legalizing fornication or something. It's like, come on, man. وَالَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ فَمِنْكُمْ كَافِرٌ وَمِنْكُمْ مُؤْمِنٌ. Allah created us, and some of us are disbelievers and some of us are believers. I need to know what makes me a believer and what makes me a disbeliever, so I can protect myself from it. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah are in the middle. That is why they came up with these 7 golden rules. The first golden rule, brothers and sisters in Islam, is kufr is a religious ruling. Determining whether someone is a kafir or a fasiq is not up to us. Rather, it's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. This is one of the rulings of Sharia, of the Islamic law, that is to be referred to the Quran and the Sunnah. So we should be very careful and base our judgment on clear proofs. No one may be judged to be a kafir, a fasiq, except the one whom the Quran and the Sunnah indicate to be a kafir or a fasiq. Simple. Simple. And this is why when you actually indulge into kufr without furnishing the evidence, you're violating the right of Allah and His Messenger. شوف أهل السنة والجماعة, very strict, very logical, middle path, middle way. طب look at rule number 2, which is really connected to rule number 1. If labeling a certain individual is a religious ruling, then who should practice takfir? The scholars, the people who know what the religious rulings are, not the layman. Since kufr is a religious ruling, then calling on individuals to be kuffar should be left for those people of knowledge who are aware of what iman is, what kufr is, and what are the things that negate a person's Islam. When is excuse for ignorance applied and when is not to be applied? It is indeed very dangerous for unqualified people specifically, who do not even know the definition of iman according to our righteous predecessors, to perform unrestricted takfir on individuals out of their own will. I love the statement of Shaykh al-Fawzan, Hafidahullah. He said, the judgment of apostasy and expelling someone from the religion is only appropriate for the people of knowledge, scholars, who are firmly grounded in knowledge. And they are the judges in the various Sharia law court, and those who are able to give legal verdicts. And this is just like the other matters of the religion. It is not the right of every person or from the right of those who are learning or those who ascribe themselves to knowledge but who have deficiency in understanding. It is not appropriate for them to make judgment of apostasy upon others, since mischief will arise from this. Like we said that there are, in the previous episode, there are serious consequences. When you rule a Muslim to be apostate, his blood is no longer sacred. This is a great danger that you could kill that person. Add to this, the individual himself, the accuser himself, could risk the fact falling into disbelief. Whoever says to his brother, ya kafir, ya fasiq, if he is not like that, then the words will fall back upon the one who said them. That is dangerous. Hence, the ones who actually judge the apostasy are the legislative judges, the scholars, and those who are able and fit for giving legal verdicts. And as for those who enforce the judgment, they are the leaders of the Muslim Ummah as well. Like those who execute the judgment, the verdict. Like, I can't just go and rule that the individual is a kafir and then kill him. No. We have a court that specializes in the matter. Scholars are there who specialize in the matter, and then it's left to the system to simply execute that verdict. Look at these golden rules. So rule number 1, it's a religious ruling. Consequently, who should engage in identifying who is a kafir or who is not? The religious scholars, the scholars of the ummah. Look at rule number 3. This one I can explain it and really was my pain in this episode when I was talking about it. You know, don't compromise. No compromise. Don't try to make people happy. And sometimes, by the way, some of the scholars, and I admit at one stage I actually said this myself, that Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, or the saved group, they just do the unrestricted takfir, اللي هو التكفير المطلق. They don't do the individual takfir. No, that is not true. In order to appear in front of al-murji'ah that you're a tolerant guy and you're okay, you're lenient, and brother, not on the, listen, the truth has to be presented to the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala labeled certain individuals who commit certain acts, who make certain statements, who believe certain beliefs to be kuffar. As long as I am establishing the evidence against them, as long as I'm fulfilling the conditions, as long as I'm removing the barriers, of course, I'm assuming that I qualify, then I could label them to be kuffar. Because I'm not going to give my daughter in marriage to somebody who doesn't pray, out of juhud, out of rejecting the command to pray. I'm not going to give my daughter in marriage to somebody who has legalized the haram. He believes that drinking is lawful. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give my daughter in marriage to someone who simply believes that no kuffar in the face of this earth. Everybody is a believer. Christian, Jews, everybody is going to paradise. So we have to do it because there are rulings which do result from the name believer or the name kafir. Number 4, let's get done here. The basis is the outward actions. The basis to judge upon or to judge a certain individual is the outward appearance. What do I mean by that? Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam sent Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, al-hadith fi al-Bukhari, to a certain battle. Usama was accompanied by another companion, and a disbeliever killed his friend. So Usama radiallahu anhu ran after this disbeliever with his sword, and the disbelievers fall down in the ground, and Usama is about to kill him. The man said, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." Usama still killed him. The matter was reported to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Usama, "Why did you do this, ya Usama?" He said, "Ya Rasulullah, he said it out of fear." Hear this. أشققت عن صدره? Did you open his chest and found out whether he did it out of fear or whether he was actually accepting it? So we as Muslims, as long as the individual says أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله, he's a Muslim. له ما للمسلمين وعليه ما على المسلمين. He is entitled to what belongs to the Muslims, and he has a right upon me. من صلى إلى قبلتنا وأكل ذبيحتنا. Whoever prays to our qibla, eats our meat, hadith, and so forth. Since whoever's Islam is affirmed with certainty, it cannot be removed from him with doubt. As long as the person appears to be a Muslim in the society, that is not my issue. I'm going to deal with him as a Muslim. والحديث جد الخوارج ذو الخويصرة, when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was distributing the spoils of war after one of the battles, one of them actually approached the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, اعدل ذو الخويصرة التميمي, اعدل, be fair, this is not fair. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, rebuked him for making such a disbelieving statement, but was standing next to the Prophet ﷺ, Khalid ibn al-Walid, in one of the wording, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, let me kill him. Umar ibn al-Khattab in another wording, let me kill him, Ya Rasulullah. He said, دَعْهُ فَإِنَّهُ يُصَلِّي, leave him because he prays. Then Khalid said, رُبَّ مُصَلِّي لَا يُصَلِّي, a lot of people do pray, but they don't really pray. They just make the moves. But Iman has not penetrated or entered into their hearts. Here is the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is to be written with ink made out of gold. I was not commanded, لَمْ أُمَرْ أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَنْ صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. I was not commanded to open the chests of men and simply try to figure out what they believe inside there. So the rule here, the golden rule that we're dealing with, which is rule number 4, that listen, we base our dealings, our rulings, the way that we treat another Muslim based on the outward appearance. The outward action is known al-hukmu bil-zahir. I do not dig into the inner beliefs of the individual to formulate a religious rulings, whether he is a believer or not. Rather, I base my rulings upon what I see, what is apparent to me. Likewise, by the way, look at the contrary of this. Let's say that there is a Muslim out there who came up with an act of disbelief, an act of kufr. Like, let's say he insults Allah and His Messenger. Like, let's say that he throws the Quran into the qadurat, into the garbage cans. Of course, these acts are acts of disbelief. Even though in his heart he may not believe that. For me, I have to rule that he's a kafir. Of course, I first have to establish the evidence against him that this is haram, fulfill the conditions and remove the barriers. Again, these mysterious terms, inshallah, time will come for us to explain them, inshallah. But again, I'm keeping them mysterious, so you keep watching these episodes, inshallah, until we get there, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But the point I'm trying to make is, al-hukm bil-zahir, even with al-kufr. If someone comes with an act, which is an act of kufr, or makes a statement, which is a statement of kufr, I could rule that he's a kafir, regardless of what he entertains or believes in his heart. Which is the total contrary to who? To al-murji'ah. Of course, when we when we go and call people disbelievers, not on the basis of what we see, we end up committing 2 offenses or 2 crimes, I would call them. Number 1, fabricating a lie against Allah and His Messenger, because remember that we said kufr and iman are religious, fisq and dhulm and nifaq are religious rulings. You must have evidence. You see the individual looking like a Muslim, acting like a Muslim, speaking like a Muslim, and yet you go and accuse him of apostasy based on doubts, based on some whims and desires, based on some faulty interpretations. You're implying a fabrication, a lie. You're fabricating a lie against Allah and His Messenger. Add to this, you're falling into that which one accused one's brother of, if he is free from that. Meaning that you could be that individual, you could be the kafir, you could be the fasiq, if it is not true regarding the accusation. Let's go to number 5. Learn the rulings resulting from takfir. With respect to individual you're accusing of kufr, and with respect to you. And we can explain this over and over again. There are rulings which are results of making takfir upon a certain individual. Once it comes to the person who is making the takfir himself, meaning If the individual you're accusing of kufr is not, then you are. And also, once it comes to the person you're accused of apostasy, his blood, his wealth is haram, and so forth. Number 6, brothers and sisters in Islam, differentiate between the act and the doer. This is a very important. The act, saying things, believing things, could be an act of kufr. But before pointing fingers, you must fulfill the conditions, remove the barriers. You must establish the evidence against the individual. Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Sham, or he came back, and as soon as he saw the Prophet ﷺ, he prostrated to him, greeting him through prostration. That is an act of kufr. Prostrating even out of tahiyyah, out of greeting in Islam, even though it was adopted by the sharia of the previous nations, like the brothers of Yusuf, kharru lahu sujjada, and so forth. But in Islam, it is not an Islamic tradition, because the sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam abrogates the previous sharias. The point I'm trying to make, here is Mu'adh prostrating to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What are you doing, ya Mu'adh? O Messenger of Allah, I saw them doing this to the rabbis and priests in Sham, in the greater Syria, and I thought you deserve much better. I should greet you. He said, don't do this, ya Mu'adh, because this is an act of kufr. This is an act of disbelief. So Mu'adh did the act or no? He did it. Now, but did he know? No, he did not. So we always have to differentiate between the act itself and the doer. As for the act, it's an act of kufr, there is no question about it. Listen, if you judge with other than the sharia of Allah, is an act of kufr, there is no question about it. But let's check the doer. Why is he doing it? Because he's lazy? Because he's compelled? Because he's ignorant? Because he ran into error? Because he ran into faulty interpretation? I have to verify all of this before I label him to be a kafir, and so forth. The last rule, brothers and sisters in Islam, which is adhering to the sharia, and that takes us to the next episode, where we have to solve the mysterious terms which I have been uttering and repeating and creating a lot of suspense, which is establishing the evidence against a certain individual, fulfilling the conditions, and removing the barriers. Those three. We have, and this is what it meant by adhering to the sharia once it comes to takfir al-mu'ayyan. Listen, you can go ahead and do as much takfir mutlaq as you want. Mutlaq means that whoever does this is a kafir. You simply describing the act. Whoever believes that Christian and Jews are believers and going to Jannah is a kafir. Whoever ridicule and mock the religion of Allah, he is a kafir. Whoever turns away from learning the deen is a kafir. Whoever takes intermediaries between him and Allah is a kafir. All of this, you can do this. But when you point finger, when you identify, you want to say that individual is, now adhere to the sharia, which is meant, this is what is meant by the final golden rule, which is number 7. When we make takfir upon a certain individual, we must fulfill the condition which do establish that the individual has committed the act of kufr willfully and knowingly, and we must remove the obstacles which are incompatible with, or they actually do cancel out the conditions. Brothers and sisters in Islam, the next episode, inshallah, we will talk about these conditions and talk about these obstacles. 4 obstacles, 4 conditions. The next episode is going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss it. Till then, I leave you in the care of Allah. I love you all for the sake of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from disbelief, from kufr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from falling into the excessive, extreme, or the negligent. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who adopt the medium course, the course of our righteous predecessors, Rasulullah, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Ridwanullahi alayhim jami'ah. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Till the next episode of Aqeedah Matters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Deep in the deepest ocean, high in the highest mountain. Deep in the deepest ocean, high in the highest mountain. In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation. In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation. He made us different nation, and there's no differentiation. He made us different nation, and there's no differentiation. If you're black, if you're white, we are all God creation. If you're black, if you're white, we are all God creation. Deep in the deepest ocean, high in the highest mountain. In the forest, in the desert, you can see God creation.